Welcome, everyone who is tuning in to our first episode here at the Roots Run Deep podcast. And today we're going to be getting into who we are at Urban Tilth and what do we do at Urban Tilth and some of the cool programs that we provide for our community. We're also going to be getting into some general understanding and basic definitions of what just transition means. With that being said, we're going to start with some introductions. I'll start it off and then I'll pass it down to my co host. My name is Rafael and I go by Rafa. I'm a just transition organizer at Urban Tilth. I have been a Richmond resident since I believe it was 2009, so a little bit over a decade. Um, my math is terrible, so y'all could correct me down in the comments. But yeah, I have been doing the work for about a year and some change. But I like to say that I've been doing it for longer than that, only because of growing up in the struggle. I was born in San Francisco, raised here in Richmond. I lived in two different homeless shelters. Shout out Grip. That was my changing point on, or really, really big point in my life where I got this sense of urgency for community at an early age, and wanting to build a community, wanting to really connect with people that are going through the same struggles that I'm going through. And I think that it's very important for us to really focus on that part here in this podcast of lived experiences. There's a lot of history here in Richmond, and those roots really do run deep. There's a lot of history, so we gotta really emphasize these lived experiences and you know make decisions and organize for our community, because the only people that know what the community needs is the community, not nobody else that's out there from a different state. So let's keep that in mind. But I'm gonna pass it down to my co-host.
Hi, my name is Kiara, Kiara Pereira. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm also a just transition organizer at Urban Tilth. I've been working around the same amount of time as Rafa at Urban Tilth, so about over a year. And I'm also a North Richmond resident, but I've been living in North Richmond since probably around like 2010. So just over a decade, basically. I should just be honest. I kind of did fall into the work, but I think that's a really important thing to bring up. Part of what we're trying to do with this podcast is to show people that you don't have to have some sort of like expertise or certain qualifications to be a part of this work, to be a part of the just transition movement. It really is for everyone. So for me, yeah, I kind of just, after graduating college, looking for jobs and stuff, I didn't want to do something that was just kind of fulfilling the like capitalist patriarchy we're under right now. So when I came across Urban Tilth, even though I had known about them for a while, I just never really interacted much. I got the opportunity to start working with them. So I feel like even though I don't really have any background in this type of work, I still feel like it's pretty cool that we're both new to this, and we don't have like this huge, extensive history of background in organizing, but we found this space where that's literally what we're hoping to like encourage people to do, is to, making this movement a movement.
Yeah, and I really wouldn't say that you don't have a background or that you just fell magically into the work. I wouldn't say any of that. Obviously, you have this idea of wanting to be outside of that mindset of, that extractive economy. And we will be getting into what extractive economy means later down this podcast. But it is very important to realize that we are not having it anymore. We want more of a better life for not just us, but our future and our community. So, yeah, thank you for the work that you do, Kiara. And now we're going to move into the last intro, which is uh, of our organization, our nonprofit, right? So, who is Urban Tilth and what does Urban Tilth do? So, take it away, Kiara.
Urban Tilth, as Rafa mentioned earlier, was founded in 2005. And I'm just going to read a little quote from the mission statement. So, in sum, we farm, feed, forage, teach, train, build community, employ, and give back. We help our community grow our own food, train and employ our own young people as homegrown experts. Teach our local residents about the relationships among food, health, poverty, and justice, and forge partnerships with local small farmers to increase demand for their produce. And the ways that we're able to do all this is through the different program areas that we have at Urban Tilth. Some of the bigger ones that most folks are probably familiar with in this area are the CSA program, which is CSA stands for Community Supported Agriculture. And then we also have a farm stand, free farm stand, that every week they go out to different areas within Richmond and they give out free produce to residents. And then we also have our educations teams, which are in Richmond High and Verde Elementary, working with young folks and teaching them about land stewardship, things like seed saving, etc.
We also have a watersheds program that focuses on the idea of restoring and regenerating. They clean up a lot of our waterways here. We have two creeks, the San Pablo Creek and the Wildcat Creek, that they do a lot of work on. And also the restoring of native species. They remove a lot of invasive plant species and replace them with native species that really help out our ecosystem. And we also have a really big team at the North Richmond farm that stewards about 3 acres of land that feeds over 500 families monthly, alongside with our community engagement organizer, Latifa, that does a lot of awesome work that focuses the perspective of our community and puts them at the forefront for any community uh, projects that are being pushed here in North Richmond. Some of the things that we like to really emphasize or uplift here are the perspectives and experiences of our community. Because, like I mentioned earlier in my introduction, the people here in our community know exactly what we need, and we just need to help uplift them. And we also have the Activate program that Kiara and I are in. We're just transition organizers, and a lot of the work that we try to push forward is just transition campaigns. And again, I will go over what just transition means, but it does a lot of work towards trying to get out of this very extractive mindset and go into a more regenerative one where we can have a lot of the say of what we see here in our community. What do we want to see in the future? One of the biggest things that uh, we have succeeded on in the just transition campaigns. There's one called the No Shade campaign that actually focused on Panettone, one of the developers that was trying to come here to our community, right next to our farm, and actually build I believe it was a 3-story parking lot, and it was actually gonna mitigate how much time or how much sunlight we actually get in our farm. Reducing the sunlight means it's reducing our productivity of how much food and produce we can actually grow. So that's uh, one of the things that Urban Tilth has done under the Just Transition No Shade campaign. It was to fight this developer. So we won, and we ended up getting an additional 7 acres. And That is honestly one of the biggest wins. And right now, we are trying to figure out still what we're going to be doing with that land because, again, we want to make sure that our community has a say on how the land is being used. So, yeah, with that being said, I kind of want to get right into the second part of this podcast, which is what does just transition mean? So I am gonna get into a little bit of some definitions or explanations of what some of these words mean, the vocabulary. So without further ado, I'll start with a definition of what just transition means. So just transition is the framework that allows us to phase out of an extractive economy and transition into a more regenerative economy, right? And first, when we hear this definition, sometimes it could be hard to understand what that even means. What does it mean to transition into a more regenerative economy, right? So, in that definition, economy shows up twice. And in order for us to understand what just transition means, we have to break down what economy means. So, in the word economy, there's a root word that is eco. And eco comes from a Greek word that's oikos, that means home. So eco actually means home, right? And when we think about home, sometimes we think about love, food, family, warmth, care, healing. I don't know if I mentioned love, but love, you know. And now when we look at the second part of economy, so eco means home. What does NAMI mean? NAMI means management, right? So if we put both of the words together, eco meaning home and NAMI meaning management, we get the management of home. Do we really want to continue living in this economy that where we already feel like we're not supposed to be part of this economy, where it's not for us, you know? Or do we want to leave that behind and start living in a economy that is for us, where it feels like we have a say, where it feels like it's meant for us, where it feels like we're being cared for, you know? And it doesn't feel like that. It doesn't feel like that right now. So I am curious to hear how you feel, or what do you think about the definition, Kiara?
I think it's important to take that definition that you gave us, Rafa, and like really think about what home means. Because I think what a lot of people tend to do with the definition like this, and I say this speaking on my own personal experience, is I think of the word home and I try to think of a very literal, very concrete definition of what that means to me. But I think it's important to kind of look at this as like the framework that it is and see that it can mean a lot more than what you initially think it means. So for me, home in the literal sense is the place where I live, where I go to sleep, where I take shelter, where I can you know have community with my relatives. It's a physical place and in time and space. But I think home in this context is also a bigger thing. It is still a literal place, but I think it's even bigger than just the four walls that you go home to at the end of every day. I think it's also just the land that we're on, right? We're all on different types of lands, and thinking about the history of how these lands were, stolen and now are just being exploited, it makes you think about what home means in a very different way, right? We're all, home is earth, right? This is where we all live. And to think about that home and how it's been treated and is continuously being treated, and you realize that it's really horrible. And if you think about it in terms of it being your house, a lot of people would say that they take pride in maintaining their home in a way that they seem, or that they think is best, and it adds a benefit to their life. But I don't think that a lot of times we like take a step back to think about how home is everything around us. It's also the people that are in the home. I think there is a huge emphasis on individualism, and we tend to kind of live our lives just thinking about what's in our immediate circle, right? Like ourselves, families, friends, people who are immediately and directly related to us. But it's about everyone. The home is the whole earth, it's the planet, it is every other being, not just humans, not just other people that we can physically or verbally talk with or communicate with. It's all the birds, it's the trees, it's the water, it's the air, it's the mountains, it's the bay, it's everything. Like all these things are a part of our home. And just to really emphasize what you were saying, Rafa, about how home is about maintaining. You want to maintain that home in a way that that is beneficial to you and to everyone else in that home. It is about cohabitation, about being able to live in the same place with other people, with other beings, and respecting it. And how do you want to maintain that? What does that look like for you? What does that look like for other people? Because it will look different for everyone. But I think that's the beauty of what a just transition means, is that it's almost so big of an idea where it allows for that conversation of what it looks like for so many different people to exist. It's not just considering one life experience, one perspective. It really is based off of many people's experiences, and kind of the figuring out what works and what doesn't work. Because I think that's important too, is just as much as we acknowledge what works, also what doesn't work.
Definitely. Like, I think it's very important to keep that in the center, where we are acknowledging every single living thing, not just human beings or what is in our immediate circle, like you said. It's really one of the things that make me happy to be doing the work that I am doing, because I know that I am acknowledging every single living being, and I want to give an example to you all of what an extractive economy looks like right now in our community of North Richmond. There is a developer that's called Centerpoint, which is right across from our North Richmond farm. If you guys know where the North Richmond farm is, um, on that same corner, there is this huge, huge, huge empty plot of land. It's about 555 thousand square feet. Um, and right there, they're gonna develop a warehouse. It's gonna be a 3-section warehouse that contributes to one big major one, and on that land, there is a lot of contaminants that are harmful to our community, our gardens, our water. If you know exactly where this is located, you also know that there is the Lucky's Ace Park that can easily be um, a sensitive point from Center Point. And also, not to mention that there is an elementary school, Verde Elementary School, that can easily be impacted as well. And it discusses me the lack of accountability on actually cleaning up that site 100%. Right now, the idea is that they're just going to cap it. They're going to only remove a certain percentage of what the contaminants are on there and on that land. and the rest they're just gonna cap. They're gonna put them in these underground like silos that they're gonna be looking after, but not as frequently as we expect them to be looking after these contaminants. And the thing that makes me even more sad is the idea of these contaminants that are on the soil seeping deeper into our soil, going into our water systems that are underground, and not even to mention that there's water rising because of global warming, because of climate change, all of it. Just imagine all of those contaminants washing into our roads, washing into the drainage that we see on the side of our curbsides. Imagine what the water washing into the elementary school, into our creeks, into our Lucky's Ace Park. It makes me really sad to even think that that's even a possibility, or that it's already happening. So that is very extractive to the things that we want to maintain, right? We want to maintain our creeks. We want to maintain these fun places where we take our children. We want to maintain our roads. We want to maintain the residential area, but we can't. We can't because the end goal of the economy that exists right now is to extract. They're extracting water that could be drinkable. They're extracting land that could be used for something else, like a museum, a library, another community garden. We are living in an area that's considered a food desert. We already at Urban Tilth feed 500 families, but we need to really up that. There's not 500 families here in North Richmond. There's not 500 families in Richmond in general, not just in unincorporated Richmond. It makes me sad that that land's being exploited, exploited for profits instead of feeding families and giving us the resources that we need. And if we're looking at that right now, it makes me even more sad that this economy actually pushes more for war and a genocide that is happening in Palestine than trying to resolve the issues that we have here. And it's not even about the issues that we have here, but around the globe. It should be a human right to have water. It should be a human right to have food. And we got to remember that. And in our economy, we're not allowed to do that. We're not allowed to grow our own food. If you try to grow your own food right now in Richmond or in North Richmond, you should definitely test your soil. That's why you see so many gardens that decide to grow food in raised beds because they're afraid that the soil that they have is contaminated already. So why not just grow it on a new patch of soil, right? So it's already in our backyard, right? There's all this flaring, all this pollution, there's toxic air, there's kids with asthma. Last year we used to think that the percentage or the amount of kids that have asthma here in North Richmond was 2 times greater than in all of Contra Costa, but it turns out it's 3 times higher. That's already extractive of our lungs, our own bodies, right? And it's all for profits, you know? And I'm gonna tell you the truth right now. I feel like our community already knows what it needs. If our community says that we want clean air, then that's what we should get. If our community says that they want to see less traffic here because there's all of this like industrial zoning really close to our residential areas, we should be able to get that. But we're not. We're not allowed, because the end goal is profits. But when we get into the idea of regenerative economy, we focus on regeneration and restoration, just kind of like how I mentioned that the watershed program focuses on, right? We should be allowed to grow our food. The food that we grow should be for our community and nowhere else, you know? And that's not to say that we are going to gatekeep food. That just means that we're going to continuously share resources with the people that need the resources. The only people that show up for our community is our own community, you know? So we got to continue trying to thrive in regenerating and having resources being replenished each time, because that is the idea of just transitioning into the regenerative economy will have you building relations, being a steward of the land. I think it's beautiful. And um yeah, I feel like I rambled a little bit too much about the actual examples that we are seeing today, and the examples that are not just here today and they're new. This podcast is called Roots Run Deep because here in North Richmond, we actually have a lot of issues. We are known as an environmental justice community. We are known as a fence line community. A fence line community means that they are adjacent. It's a community that is adjacent to a major polluter. And that's us. Who's the major polluter? Chevron, you know? So again, I want to close this out with a question that I'm posing to the audience. And the question is, how do you see just transition in your community, right? And I'm going to answer that question. So, in my community, which is North Richmond, I see just transition as our community being able to be free to grow food, be able to have a say in who comes into our community. If we don't want that development to come in, then we should not allow them to. That's how I see just transition happening here in North Richmond. So I want to pass that question down to you, Kiara. How do you see just transition in your community? What does it look like to you?
I think for me, the way I see just transition, or like what I envision it being, what it means to me is, I guess, a sense of peace. And that sounds kind of weird, but like I just think of it like not even like examples of what it looks like, but I just imagine like through just transition, like a lot of people feeling a sense of peace with the world they live in, which I think is the complete opposite of what most of us feel right now. And when I say peace, I don't mean like like unnatural state of happiness where like everybody's just feeling happy and euphoric all the time. Like, no, it's not like a cult or anything. I just mean like when I say peace, I mean there's a lot less of a stress of a weight to carry around. And I feel like right now we do feel that, right? With the way that our world operates, I think so many people are being weighed down by the systems and the structures that we're living in. And I think with a just transition, you do get that peace that you don't feel normally in this world, but a piece of it's enough for everyone, right? Like we really value equity, and I think a just transition is just that. Put simply, it really does value equity and everybody having what they need, everybody's needs being met. And I think with that, piece is short to follow. It's right there. So for me, yeah, that's what a just transition means.
That is actually really beautiful. And I think it's funny that you said it's not a cult, because people try to say that like the things that we believe are very hippie like, and I think that's really not a valid statement. If anything, I feel like it's not a hippie statement or a hippie movement. It's not. It's really us just trying to get equity and have a hold on what's ours, and we're tired of living paycheck to paycheck, So I think what you said was pretty funny, but definitely one of the very important things is that everyone is happy. Everyone is in a position where they're able to do what they want to do. This is meaningful work. So, with that being said, I want to hear from the audience a little bit about what just transition means to them or how do they see it in their community. So, feel free to, in the comment section below, just leave your answer and we'll try to respond to them. And if you don't want to be transitioning into a more regenerative economy and you are just happy with the economy that you're in today, then talk about that too. This is not a podcast pointing fingers on who's right and who's wrong. This is a podcast where we learn from our community. We learn from the roots that we come from. So if you feel otherwise, leave that comment down below. I want to hear everything. Let's talk about it, So we'll try to get to those comments as soon as possible, and still stay tuned. Stay tuned for our next episode that is coming next month in March. So yeah, thank you for listening. Anything else you want to say, Kiara?
I just wanted to say a big thank you if you made it to the end of this episode 1 of many, hopefully. And yeah, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day. I genuinely very much appreciate it to listen to just some of our words and thoughts on some of these subjects. And yeah, looking forward to next episode. We hope you take care, and we will see you later. Bye.
Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you for listening. See you guys in the next episode. Peace.